Back to the White House, Jackie Heinrich has some new information for us. Jackie.
Yeah, I just went up to the press area to get an understanding of what we're watching. This is what I was told. The president has kicked Zelenskyy out of the White House. His delegation right now is telling him that he's got to go home. The president felt disrespected. Officials in the room felt that beyond the language barrier that we've heard some discussion about, Zelenskyy's body language, shrugging and eye rolling, was ungrateful, disrespectful, and the president feels that Zelenskyy is not ready for peace and he can come back when he's ready to talk about peace, but he's not in that position right now, and Zelenskyy is being told he's got to go. The lunch that they were supposed to have is sitting right outside the hallway, and the press staffers are going to be eating that lunch. This is really pretty incredible. We see the
Jackie,
SUV,
hang on with us one
Zelensky's
moment.
SUV.
If you look to your left, you're going to see him. Let's watch.
Mr. President, is the deal off? President Zelenskyy, can you tell us what happened?
Mineraalisopimuksen allekirjoittaminen peruttiin kokonaan ja Zelenskyy juuri astui autoonsa. Sadat toimittajat.
Did you sign the minerals deal? Did you sign the minerals deal?
Why were you so disrespectful to the president?
We may be watching the floor fall through this moment in international relations and diplomacy, or this might be the art of the deal, and we're not going to know for some time. Jackie, it appears that even going into this meeting that this relationship was not great. About a week ago, President Trump called Zelenskyy a dictator. He was asked about that yesterday with the British Prime Minister, and he said, "Did I say that?" Next question. As if he wanted to brush that off and make sure that things today went smoother.
Well, Zelenskyy, we're told, was begging to stay and work this out. The Ukrainians were begging the president and the White House to continue talking. The president's having none of it. He felt that Zelensky's just not ready for peace, and this deal was not signed. There is no signing. There will be no joint press conference. The next time we're going to see the president is at departure. There he goes right behind me. Zelenskyy on his way out of the White House gate. No deal signed, no joint press conference, tensions at an all-time high between these two leaders. Really, the prospect of peace talks, what this means for the war that has raged on for 3 years, you cannot overstate what a moment in time we've just witnessed. And while the president left the invitation open to come back when you're ready to talk seriously about what it takes to achieve peace, Zelenskyy feels very dug in. He was dismissive of the U.S. overtures that you've got to accept a ceasefire first. You've got to deal with the other side. The divide between the two could not be wider. And so we expect to see the president at departure, Marine One departure later on this afternoon when he heads to Mar-a-Lago for the weekend. But that is the only other time we're going to hear directly from him. And I guess we'll hear from Zelenskyy on special report tonight. But that is going to be must-watch TV after what we have witnessed here today.
That the press conference has been canceled. So if that continues to be the case, Zelenskyy could have come to the U.S. and will leave empty-handed. And the United States, working toward that mineral rights deal, will also be without a deal as well. And I mentioned this situation in Hanoi for a reason, because Trump and Pompeo were behind closed doors negotiating with Kim Jong-un. It was historic. It was the second time they had gotten together, and Trump and Pompeo, by all accounts, were pressing Kim to sign a deal and come to an agreement, and they weren't getting anywhere. So both men said, meeting's over. They got up, they came into a separate room in the hotel, held a press conference, took questions for about 30 minutes, got on the plane and flew home. And that was the end of these negotiations between the United States and North Korea. So we are told right now the press conference will not happen. Could that change? I guess it could, Sandra, right? Any moment, any time.
Not considering what we're hearing that the President Trump, has asked Zelenskyy to leave. We have not seen his departure yet, but that apparently has happened. And I suppose, Carl, you could have gotten that read from the statement. Worth putting that back up on the screen. President Trump, just moments following that fiery exchange in the Oval Office, took to his Truth Social account to talk about what he called a very meaningful meeting at the White House today. Much was learned, he said. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its treasured Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Here's more, Carl, from that exchange. Our team pulled another soundbite, another really telling moment. Listen. Okay, we're going to pull that together for you in just a second. Carl, let me read you the verbatim, because this is important. He tells Zelenskyy in the Oval Office, you don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Zelenskyy responded, I'm not playing cards, to which the President Trump said, but right now you don't. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III, he says again, and what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have. Carl?
Well, look, that may be true, but it would be better if it was expressed in private, because both men have now walked themselves to a rhetorical edge, and it may be difficult to pull back from that edge. And it's important that they do. The best thing that could happen now is that they come to an agreement on this minerals deal and walk away with as nice as comments as they can make. Because the only winner today, if there is no deal and if these two men leave, the only winner is Vladimir Putin, and the result will be more death, more destruction, because it will embolden Putin. So both of these men need to step back for a moment, consider the greater stakes here, get the deal done. They don't need to have a press conference. They can issue a joint statement that both of their teams can work out, and they can be done with this. But if this ends up with no agreement, and the two men go their separate ways, one to return to the battlefront in Ukraine and the other to go to Mar-a-Lago, the only winner will be Vladimir Putin, and this situation in Europe will get worse, and it will embolden Putin, and more importantly, it will embolden the allies of Putin, namely Tehran, Beijing, and Pyongyang, because they will see this as weakness by the West, that the United States cannot lead and that the Ukrainians cannot be brought into a reasonable situation, and it will be bad, really bad. So
here is the latest from the White House official. It says that Zelenskyy is leaving the White House early. Not that he has left yet, just to clarify that from a moment ago, after the contentious meeting that we watched. Brett's interview is still on schedule for 6 o'clock tonight. Brett's interviewed Zelenskyy, I believe, 4 times now, or this might have been the upcoming 4th time this evening. And he tells me that his interview is scheduled to be in English, so without a translator. So just to fill that in on the conversation as to whether or not the language barrier contributed to the contentious moment we just watched.
All reporters go back. Just cameras and photographers up front. If the reporters stay moved to back.
Just keep in mind the center. Yeah. Okay. Peter's going to be center. Still center first. We're each shooting a gap in between the chairs, so I'm going to go to the left, and you guys just got to pick a gap.
Cameras first, and then report with like a 10-second pause.
reporters will come in after. Love it.
Really?
Yeah.
5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Don't negotiate down. Wait, well, I wasn't going to go to 4 seconds. I was going to keep it at 10. We're still doing this. So clearly we didn't.
I won't. We leave at 3.
Me?
Yeah.
Line up here with, this is our only still. Our only Ukrainian still.
Like, because no one's got something.
Well, I'll let you guys. But it's not. Reporters just.
I don't know, I want to show you guys how fast.
We want that to.
You'll notice it.
That's like
Okay. He needs to stop.
because then worked out for us on that one. Like we're gonna try to do that again next time. Like this. What are they? I think it's last minute ones are pain, but they do help. Sometimes a walk up song. Yeah. What's your go-to walk up song? Tactics. She's Candy every time. Oh, I don't know. It's good. Every time someone's like, I'm like, what's this? Like, what's your reference on this? And I'm just like, I'll be back to you on that. I had that first realization. I was like,
It's not silver.
Short hair. There are short hair.
There are chairs today. So no, I don't want to stay because you're not getting space for the car. So we're standing on the chair. Probably just stand on the same area a lot of times.
Oh, no, now for it.
We have chairs. I don't know if it's all the way. There are chairs. We're gonna do this in like 10-second matches to make it go order.
That works for me.
Hi guys.
Howdy, guys.
How are we? Good to see you too. Just a breath of fresh air every once in a while. Feels good. It is Friday, and I'm not on the road this weekend. I'm taking my baby to Aquatata swim school for his swim class. Wow. Yes, he's in the tadpole level 1.
All right, guys. Cameras and sound first. Reporters hold for a second.
Oh,
The reporters hold for a second, guys.
oh,
5 seconds. Guys, 5 seconds.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. And we've been working very hard, very close. And we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time and very well. We had a little negotiation spat, but that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries. And we have something that is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging and working and getting some of the rare earth. But it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States, and we appreciate working with you very much. And we will continue to do that. We have had some very good discussions with Russia. I spoke with President Putin, and we're going to try and bring this to a close. It's something that you want and that he wants. We have to negotiate a deal. But we've started the confines of a deal, and I think something can happen. The big thing is the number of soldiers, mostly at this point, but soldiers being killed. You're losing thousands of soldiers. On both sides, we're losing a lot of soldiers, and we want to see it stop, and we want to see the money get put to different kinds of use, like rebuilding. And we're going to be working very hard, but we've had a lot of very good conversations. I will say until we came along, the Biden administration didn't speak to Russia whatsoever. They didn't speak to anybody. They just allowed this to continue. And I will say that, I'll say in front of you, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, if I were president, this war would have never happened. We would have had a deal negotiated for you without having to go through what you've gone through. But your soldiers have been unbelievably brave. We've given them great equipment, but somebody has to use the equipment. They've been unbelievably brave, and we give them great credit. This was supposed to be over very quickly, and here we are 3 years later. So I give tremendous credit to your generals and your soldiers and yourself in the sense that it's been very hard fighting, very tough fighting, great fighters. And you have to be very proud of them from that standpoint. But now we want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with. So it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room in a little while, right after lunch. And we'll be having lunch together. We're also discussing some other things. And we appreciate everybody being here. It's somewhat of an exciting moment, but the really exciting moment is when they stop the shooting and we end up with a deal. And I think we're fairly close to getting that, and an honor to have you. And please, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for invitation. And really, I hope that this first document, will be first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation, and of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees. Because for today, I understand what Europe is ready to do, and of course, I want to discuss with you what United States will be ready to do. And I really count on your strong position to stop Putin. And you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he's a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him. But for us, it's very important to, to save our country, our values, our freedom and democracy, and of course, no compromises with the killer about our territories. But it will be later. And of course, what I wanted, we spoke about it by phone with you about the drones production. We have very good drones production. I think the best one in the world for today because of the war. Yes, and of course, we need very much the air defense. You have the best air defense in the world, and really you helped us under attacks of Russians. And I want to speak how we can exchange the licenses. We're open to share the licenses of all our drones with you, of course, with the United States. And we need licenses for quick production of air defense. Even after the war, we need our nation to be calm, that we are secure. So that's why we need this air shield. And of course, about this I want to speak about the contingents. I think that France and UK already spoke to you, and we know that Europe is ready, but without the United States, they will not be ready to be as strong as we need. And the last point, last not least, about exchange, about our people and children. And you know that these crazy Russians, that they stolen 20,000 of children, Ukrainian children. They changed their names, they changed their families, relatives, and now they're in Russia. We want to bring them back, and really, it's a big dream, task, and goal for me, and our warriors. By the way, Mr. President, we exchanged, released more than 4,000 warriors from Russian prison, but there are thousands more in the prison. I wanted to share with you some images, how it's just can I now?
Yeah, please, please.
One minute. Just you to understand in what circumstances, in what situation they are, and what the attitude of Russia to our prisoners. That guys, just you before and after. And you see before and after, just you to understand. Now thousands of such guys, ladies and men, there, and so they don't eat, they beat them, and they, so they do a lot of bad things. So out of, even during the war, there are rules. Everybody knows there are rules during the war. So these guys, they don't have any rules. You see that 50, 60 kilograms left, and a lot of such things. And I didn't want to show you what the changes with images of children, because I will just share with you. I mean, it's looking tragic.
Yep, it's tough stuff.
Yeah, I wanted very much to give you, and you see it.
Yeah.
This is pastor, by the way. They stolen pastors, because it's not Russian church. They stolen pastors and moved pastors to the prison. At the end of last year, we brought 3 pastors, and we could exchange them. This is pastor, you see.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. So I mean, I wanted to show you, and this. So thank you very much.
We want to get that ended, right?
Yeah, of course. We
And
will.
I think we will. And
We have to, of course.
do you have any questions, please?
When you continue to ask you about the president,
Thank you,
Mr. President. With how much money is the U.S. going to put into the fund that is being created today, and how does this provide long-term security for Ukraine?
Well, we don't know exactly how much, because we're going to be putting some money in a fund that we're going to get from the raw earth that we're going to be taking and sharing in terms of revenue. So it's going to be a lot of money will be made from the sale and from the use of raw earth. And as you know, our country doesn't have much raw earth. We have a lot of oil and gas, but we don't have a lot of the raw earth. And what we do have is protected by the environmentalists, but that can be unprotected. But still, it's not very much. They have among the best in the world in terms of raw earth. So we're going to be using that, using it for all of the things we do, including AI and including weapons and the military, and it's really going to very much satisfy our needs. So it's something that just worked out really well. We have a lot of oil, and we have a lot of gas, but we don't have raw earth. So this has just about every component of the raw earth that we need for computers, for all of the things we do. This puts us in great shape.
And long-term security for Ukraine. How does this provide?
I think they're going to have great luck. I think once we make the agreement, that's going to be 95% of it. They're not going to go back to fighting. I've spoken with President Putin, and I feel very strong. I've known him for a long time, and I feel very strongly that they're very serious about it, and we'll make a deal. And when the deal is made, I don't think we talk about security. Everyone's talking about the other day, all they talked about was security. I said, let me make the deal first. I have to make the deal first. I don't worry about security right now. We have to have a deal, because right now, last week, 2,000 soldiers died on both sides. 2,000. And they're losing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a week. So as we sit here and we talk, people are getting shot and dying on the battlefield. And, you know, they're not American soldiers, but they're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers, and we want to be able to stop it. And we want to be able also to spend money on other things. We don't want to, this is a tremendous amount of money. And what the Biden administration did was terrible. They were giving money, but he had no security on the money. Europe, as you know, gave much less money, but they had security. It was in the form of a loan. They get their money back, and we didn't. And now, at least we're protected because the American taxpayer has to be protected too. But this is an incredible agreement for Ukraine because we have a big investment in their country now. And what they have, very few people have. And we're able to really go forward with very, very high-tech things and many other things, including weaponry that we're going to use in many locations, but that we need for our country. This allows us to do that.
Will you continue?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can I?
Military aid.
Yes, go ahead, please.
If
Yeah.
I can just, yes. In the document, there is one of the very important points. If we speak about business and investment, we never had LNG terminals in Ukraine. This document will open. I mean, the next document, but anyway, here we
President Zelensky, do you feel like the U.S. is on your side? That the President Trump is on your side at this moment?
What do you think?
He wants to know, do you think that, sort of a stupid question, because I guess we wouldn't be here if I wasn't. But
I think that the United States on our side from the very beginning of occupation, and I think that President Trump on our side, and of course, I'm sure that the United States President will not stop support. This is crucial for us. It's important for us. Yes. And Putin, the president speaks about the people and the soldiers which are dying, but they came to our territory, they came to our land. They began this war, and they have to stop. And I think this is the question, was really the most important question. Can President Trump, I hope yes, with some other allies, to stop Putin, withdraw these enemies, our enemy, withdraw these troops from our land? And I think that you asked about the history. I think that if President, or when, he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall.
we've had very, very good talks.
What about military aid to Ukraine?
President Zelensky just said that there'd be no compromises with Vladimir Putin. I just wanted to ask both of you. Firstly, are there compromises that you think that President Zelensky is going to have to make? And President Zelensky, is there anything that you think that you may be able to offer or bring to the table, for example, elections? Thank you.
I think you're going to have to always make compromises. You can't do any deals without compromises. So certainly he's going to have to make some compromises, but hopefully they won't be as big as some people think you're going to have to make. That's all. It's all we can do. I'm here as an arbitrator, as a mediator to a certain extent between two parties that have been very hostile, to put it mildly. They've been very hostile. There's been a vicious war. There's been a vicious war. You know, it's a very level battlefield, and those bullets go out, and as I've said many times, we were talking about it with Pete, many times the only thing stopping those bullets is a human body. And in the case we're talking about, generally young human bodies are stopping a lot of bullets. It's dead level. That's why it's great farmland. It's great land. It's great farmland, but there's very little protection against the bullets that are being, and other things that are being shot. So all I can do is see if I can get everybody at the table and get an agreement. And I think we're going to end up with an agreement. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably be even here today.
Mr. President, I've got two questions for you. You think ultimately your legacy will be the peacemaker and not the president that led this country into another war and ended foreign wars? And I've got a question.
I hope it will. I mean, I hope I'm going to be remembered as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing if we could do this. I'm doing this to save lives more than anything else. Second is to save a lot of money, but I consider that to be far less important. So I hope I'm going to, thank you, Brian, for that question. It was a nice question. I hope I'll be known and recognized as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing to solve. This is a very dangerous situation. You know, this could lead to a third world war. This was headed in the wrong direction. If this election were lost, if we didn't win this election, and by the way, we won it by a lot. That was a mandate. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. We won everything. The districts, you look at the areas of red, take a look at a map. This was a big mandate, and this was one of the things. I said, we're going to get this thing settled. If we didn't win, I think this could have very well ended up in a third world war, and that would not have been a good situation. What was your second question?
My second question for President Zelensky.
No.
Why don't you wear a suit?
Why?
Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see, do you own a suit?
Yeah, you have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
authority of
such.
this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one,
Maybe something like this.
yours. Yes,
That'd be great.
maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, President Trump. You said yesterday.
Are you going to send more arms to Ukraine in case there's no peace?
Yeah, we're going to have arms to Ukraine, yeah, sure. Hopefully I won't have to send very much because hopefully we're going to have it finished. We're looking forward to finishing this quickly. We're not looking forward to sending a lot of arms. We're looking forward to getting the war finished so we can do other things. But we very much appreciate the agreement because we needed what they had, and we're treating, you know, our country is now treated fairly. Biden didn't do that. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. This should have never happened. This should have never started. But, you know, sure, the answer is yes, but hopefully we won't have to send much because I'm looking forward to getting it done quickly, very quickly.
Does that mean you provide security guarantees, Mr. President?
I don't want to talk about security yet because I want to get the deal done. You know, you fall into the same trap like everybody else. A million times you said over and over. I want to get the deal done. Security is so easy. That's about 2% of the problem. I'm not worried about security. I'm worried about getting the deal done. The security is the easy part. Security is very nice. Everybody stopped shooting. And now will Europe put people there? I know France is going to. I know the UK is going to. I know other countries are going to, and they happen to be right next door. We haven't committed, but we could conceivably. You know, we have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth so that we can create a lot of great product in this country. So in that sense, you have something, but we haven't determined that yet. I will say, in speaking to France and in speaking to, and they were here, as you know, last week and just the other day, they have committed to a lot of security. I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back. When this deal ends, I really believe this deal is going to be over. Question? Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
President, thank you.
Thank you.
Macron and Keir Starmer at the White House this past week, both of whom praised your courage and conviction to lead the pathway towards peace.
Yes.
Part of that involved, though, re-engaging with Russia in diplomatic relations, something that previous leaders lacked the conviction to do so. What gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy. Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Well, that's why I like him. One American News does a great job. I like the question. I think it's a very good question. It's a pathway to peace. It's a pathway to getting something solved. And I feel that as the head of this country, I have an obligation to do that. Plus, you know, we're very much involved. We got involved. It's too bad we got involved because there should have been no involvement because there should have been no war. And there shouldn't have been October 7th. That would have never happened. As you know, Iran was broke. They had no money to give to Hezbollah. They had no money to give to Hamas. They were stone cold broke. And then under Biden, they became rich as hell. They went from no money to $300 billion in a period of 4 years. And they gave a lot of that money away, and you see what happened. And that's a real mess also that we hope to be able to solve. But no, I appreciate your question very much. I feel I have an obligation to try and do something to stop the death.
If I can answer, yes, if I can answer,
Please,
sorry,
go ahead.
please.
And I do like your clothing, though.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a
Yeah,
great guy,
yeah,
by the
yeah.
way. But I don't know if you two like each other, but you know what? I think
No,
he's
no,
dressed. I think he's
why?
dressed
I like
beautifully.
this guy. I don't know
I think
him.
he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more. I have more serious things than answer on such
Yes,
questions.
that's a
I will
good-
answer on more serious
that's a good
questions if
statement.
I can.
Yes.
Yeah. So please, about security guarantees and about just ceasefire. We can't just speak about ceasefire and speak and speak. It will not work. Just ceasefire will not never work because I'm like a president. I have this experience, and not only me. Ukraine before my presidency, from the 2014, Putin broken 25 times. 25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke
No,
to
no,
me.
you were the president.
He
You
never
were the
broke-
president
he
during.
never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr. President. You've been the president, but he had, of course, not with you, but he had during those periods. He had conversations with our side, and we had Normandy format. You know, the France, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia, and he broken 25 times. That's why we will never accept just ceasefire. It will not work without security guarantees. Security guarantees, maybe President is right about this document and other, but this document is not enough. Strong army is enough because his soldiers afraid, Putin's soldiers afraid of our soldiers when we're strong enough. If we are not strong enough, if we are empty, if our storage is empty, we can't defend our land. Today, you know, he knows that we have, all the world knows that we have meeting, yes? Why he's using ballistic? Putin today using ballistic on our hospitals, schools, and it says ballistic. So he knows that we are here and that President Trump is really have goodwill to stop this war. And you hear now the president. So why he's using? So he doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want. But I hope that we will do it. Really, we'll do it. Security, when we speak about security guarantees, when the Europeans are ready for contingents, they need USA backstop. If there will not be United States, we will not never have any contingents, strong contingents from the Europeans, because they don't want to divide alliance, connection between the United States and the main and strongest ally and Europeans. And this is crucial, this is important. That's what we want to speak about very much. This is very important. And air defense. So air defense, really, we have big deficit with all these systems, and we need to provide this. We need it very much. Otherwise, Putin will never stop and will go further and further. He doesn't want. He hates us, you know. It's not about me. He hates Ukrainians. He thinks that we are not a nation. He thinks, and he shares these thoughts, I think maybe with your team also, I don't know. But with all the Europeans, in media, officially and not, he always said that there is no such country, such nation, such language, and such life like Ukrainian. No, he really doesn't respect all the Ukrainians, and he wants to destroy us. And you are right, Mr. President, that's 2%. This document, maybe other documents, it's a very good start, very good, but it will not enough to stop this person.
Mr. President, may I one more question, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
I asked President
They have to
Zelensky
pay.
this question. You
This
didn't
is
like
the rule.
because-
This is the rule of
because
the
I-
war. This is the rule of the war. During all the centuries, all the history, this is the rule of the war. Who began, those pay. This is the rule. Putin began this war. He has to pay all money for innovation. He has to pay. Of course, some Russian assets, what we have in Europe, about 300 billion, we can use them. We can use for innovation and buy military support from the United States also. We can do it, but it's not enough. It's
Mr.
not enough.
President, I asked this question that you didn't like because I wanted to know.
Go ahead, please. Wait 1 second.
I asked this question that you didn't like because I wanted to know if you want to position yourself in the middle between Russia and
Yes,
Ukraine,
I
or
do.
on the Ukraine side.
No, I'm in the middle. I want to solve this thing. I'm for both. I want to get it solved. And it's wonderful to speak badly about somebody else, but I want to get it solved. If we can solve it, great. If we can't solve it, they're going to have to fight it out, and who knows what's going to happen. But I want to see it get solved.
May I follow up? One more question about U.S. troops in Europe. After Russian invasion of Ukraine, your predecessor sent additional troops to Eastern Europe, including Poland, my country.
Yeah.
Are you committed to keeping these troops on the eastern flank of NATO in the future?
I'm very committed to Poland. I think Poland has really stepped up and done a great job for NATO. They, as you know, they paid more than they had to. They are one of the finest groups of people I've ever known. I'm very committed to Poland.
What about Baltics?
Poland's in a tough neighborhood, you know.
What about the Baltics?
The Baltics, they got a lot of, it's a tough neighborhood too, but we're committed. We're going to be very committed, and we're committed to NATO. But NATO has to step up, and the Europeans have to step up more than they have. And I want to see them equalize, because they are in for far less than we're in, and they should be at least equal. You understand that? Why is the United States, we have an ocean in between, why is the United States in for so much more money and other things as Europe? With that being said, and as you said, they've also been obviously very helpful. But we have put in far more than they have, and I think they should equalize. Yeah, please, go ahead.
About the agreement again today, what changed between the first time that Secretary Bessent gave President Zelensky the agreement and today for the signing?
We made a deal. So
What was the
I'm
difference?
just,
Was there a deciding factor, or was
I'm a business person. We made a deal. That's what changed. I didn't think we were going to make a deal, and we ended up making the deal. So that changed. You know?
Mr. President, what and how do you envision a trilateral summit with President Zelensky and?
I don't know, but it's, well, they don't like each other. I can tell you that. Okay, they do not like each other. This is not a love match, and it's unfortunate. That's why you're in this situation. The United States should not have allowed this to happen. Okay, the United States, run by a man that didn't know much. I'm going to be very nice. Run by an incompetent person, very incompetent person, should never have allowed this to happen. I've stopped wars. I've stopped many wars. My people will tell you, I stopped wars that nobody ever heard about. I stopped wars before they ever started. You can look at some of, I could give you a lot of nations that would tell you right now they were probably going to war. I could tell you right now there's a nation thinking about going to war on something that nobody in this room has ever even heard about. Two smaller nations, but big, still big. And I think I've stopped it. But this should have never happened.
Sorry, just a second. About any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, more than Ukrainians, nobody wants to stop this war. But at the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that two sides of the war, not Russia and the United States, because this is not the war between Russia and the United States. This is war of Russia against Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So these two sides will be at the anyway will be at the negotiation table. Then of course United States, like the strongest partner of the Ukraine, and of course Europe. I think Europe is very important. I want to speak about it with the president. Yes, Europe is very important for us because we really defend Europe for today. All Europeans really recognize that we are defending the line, and they have real life, and our people are dying. That's why they helped us. And also, it's about the NATO. Yes, between, like the president said, you have big, nice ocean. Yes, between us. But if we will not stay, Russia will go further to Baltics and to Poland, by the way. But first to the Baltics. It's understandable for them because they've been in the USSR. You know, they've been one of the republics of the USSR, and Putin wants to bring them back to his empire. It's a fact. And when he will go there, if we will not stay, you will fight. Your American soldiers, it doesn't matter, do you have ocean or not, your soldiers will fight.
Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine, maybe Kyiv or Odessa, which is known to be a very Euro Black Sea?
It was my question.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about Odessa now. Let's not talk about Odessa. I want to talk about making a deal, getting peace. We don't have to talk about Odessa, but a lot of cities have been destroyed. There are a lot of cities that are not recognizable. There's not a building standing.
No,
and
you
a lot of
things
have
Mr.
to
President,
happen.
you have to come and to look. No. We have very good cities. Yes, a lot of things been destroyed, but mostly cities alive, and people work, and children go to school. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes closer to front line, children have to go to underground schools or online. But we live. Ukraine is fighting, and Ukraine lives. This is very important. And maybe it's Putin is sharing this information that he destroyed us. No, he lost 700,000 people, 700,000 soldiers. He lost everything. Yes. So.
Mr. President, when did you last speak?
One more.
When,
I mentioned
Mr. President, thank you.
Please,
Mr.
go ahead.
President, when did you last speak with President Putin, and what did he say that?
A couple of days ago.
And what did he tell you that gave you the assurance that he wanted peace?
Well, that's what I do. My whole life is deals. I know pretty good. And I've known him for a long time. I've dealt with him for a long time. He had to suffer through the Russia hoax. You know, Russia was a hoax. It was all Biden. It was nothing to do with him. So he had to suffer through that, and he was able to do that. I think that he wants to make a deal, and he'd like to see it end. That's all I do. That's what I do. My whole life, that's what I do is make deals. And I'm in the middle of a mess because this is a real mess. It's a very dangerous one. If this doesn't get solved now, it's not going to get solved for a long time. So I hope we're going to get it solved. In the back, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister Starmer claimed repeatedly that his government believes in free speech and was not engaged in censorship. But his country's government arrests people for memes and thought crimes, and even more worrisome is pressuring American companies to censor Americans on its behalf. How can he be a reliable, trustworthy partner when he says things that are demonstrably false on such an important topic?
Well, we actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it. So was I. So was Marco, and we've been speaking to him about it. Marco, would you like to say something about that?
We have concerns, obviously, with the conduct of those, particularly as it impacts Americans. And there's real concern that American speech, which is online, could fall into the hands of the British or any country's jurisdiction. And so this is a point the Vice President made in Munich, and I think it's a very compelling one that unites us with Europe as much as anything else is these shared values, and one of them being free speech. And so if Americans are threatened by it, we're going to need to take action in that regard.
JD? It's actually a very important question.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday, and I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. This is really important. We believe Americans have the right to speak their mind, even if we in this room disagree with them. They have the right to speak their mind in the public square, which is often online these days. And we're going to defend that right as it pertains to American companies and American citizens vigorously if we have to. I do think that under the President's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen. The principle that will guide us is we believe in free speech in this country, and we'll fight for it for American citizens.
Mr. President, on the deal, is there any other oil and gas component to the deal? Is it all critical?
A little bit. We'll see.
On LNG?
But we're not really looking for that so much. We got a lot. We have more than anybody in the world, by far. So, no, we're not talking about it too much, but a little bit. I think it affects also, but for the most part, no.
And, sir, is there any agreement from Ukraine to purchase U.S. LNG as part of the deal, or is that on the table at all?
No,
Mr.
we don't need that.
Mr. President, I just wanted to ask you about, you just mentioned that you'd spoken to Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. Just to be clear, that's a new call, not the one that you were
I've spoken to him on numerous occasions.
Okay. And how was the latest call? What did you discuss? How did it go?
Are you serious with that question?
I am. I'd love to know.
It went well. I think we're going to have a deal.
On the minerals deal, Mr. President, some of those minerals are in the east of Ukraine, not far from the front lines, and in areas that Russia.
A very good question. Thank you so much.
Would you direct President Putin to withdraw his forces from those areas if there's U.S. interest?
Well, we'll take a look at the time. We have a lot of area. It's a very big area we're talking about, so we'll take a look. I'll study that, and I'll see.
And who would protect those minerals if they are U.S. interest? Would that be Ukrainian?
They'll be protected. The agreement will protect them. the agreement. Yeah, we're signing an agreement. You know?
Right, but what if Russia tries to invade or orders Russian aggression in those spots?
I just told you I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal. If I thought that was going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal. You know, they ought to focus on CNN on survival, not asking me these ridiculous questions. Right. Focus on surviving, because CNN's got such low ratings. I don't think they're going to survive. Let's go. Yeah, please, go ahead.
One more. Since I already mentioned Poland. Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, you know, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question. Yeah, please.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden, of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014
2014.
and 2014.
Well, 2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but,
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people are been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You're
gambling with World War III.
What are you
You're
thinking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I,
You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't, please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But
But
you're
I
saying
said,
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
it doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what.
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
nation- it
That was
wasn't
with
you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
But this
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me.
But
Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia, the 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right. We'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see. I don't know. Please. Hey, let's roll. Let's roll. Guys, come on. Thank you. Jay. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, you're good, brother. No, you're good. No, you're fine, buddy. I'm sorry if I messed you up.
No, who's that guy next to you? That big tall.
Dan Hoffman's still here, so is Karl Rove. As we move to the top of the next hour, Dan, let's bring you back in. Then we'll get to Karl here before we start a fresh hour. I mentioned this, that Trump is still willing to do a deal, and he's still willing to do a deal while Zelenskyy is still in the country. And as we said 5 minutes ago, he's not wheels up yet. Dan.
Well, look, clearly this was a missed opportunity. I would emphasize again this meeting between President Trump and President Zelenskyy began with President Zelenskyy showing pictures of Russian war crimes. And look, Russia started the war. They invaded Ukraine. Russia could stop the war right now if they stopped raining down hell on Ukrainian civilians. But they're not doing that. And there's no question that Ukraine wants peace. I think if you ask Ukrainians, they absolutely want peace. I think President Zelenskyy wants peace. I think the issue for Ukraine is what Ukraine will look like post-war. What kind of reconstruction will we see? What kind of deterrence will we have against potential future Russian aggression? I think those are the issues at stake here. And if both sides can take some time now, to take a step back and maybe revisit this, I'm not very confident we're going to see that. But that's clearly what we need to be thinking about doing.
Yeah, Karl, I'll bring you in for a final thought here before we kick off a new hour. I said before the break, France's Macron has been reacting to this shouting match in the Oval Office, reacting by saying Russia's the aggressor, Ukraine is the aggressed people. Macron says we're all right to help Ukraine and sanction Russia 3 years ago and continue to do so. We must respect those who have been fighting since the beginning. Also noting, Brett has sent out a note, Brett Baer, saying that the interview he has with President Zelenskyy on special report tonight is still on. And the White House does know that he's sitting down for that as well. The president's aware. So that will be fascinating to watch. Carl, get your thoughts here.
Well, I thought Dan was absolutely right. The Russians invaded Ukraine, and it's in Putin's ability to stop the war immediately. If I were Vladimir Putin and his advisor, or excuse me, if I were Zelenskyy and his advisors, I'd be remembering that you're dealing with the producer of The Apprentice. So the best thing to do here is to think about how this can be structured in such a way that they win and the President of the United States wins. And the best way to do that is to go on tonight and to express an interest, a deep interest in having this agreement done, and to express a willingness to fly to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow to cut the deal with the President and his advisors, and trying tonight with Walz and Rubio and Bassett to get the agreement done so that the President of the United States can have a big victory at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow or Sunday, and Ukraine can go home with knowing that the United States is now economically tied to the survival of their country.
Well, the sausage making of American diplomacy typically takes place behind the scenes. It's typically just adjacent to the Oval Office in the cabinet room, where you have the tough conversations, and then the united front or the tea leaves are delivered in front of cameras in the Oval, and we are left to discern whether it was a good or a bad meeting. But you just saw live the sausage making of American diplomacy in the Oval Office before all of our eyes. It is 5 years, 7 months, and 4 days from the first time these two men spoke. And during that very first conversation, Zelenskyy said he had a lot to learn from President Trump. He, in fact, said, "You are a great teacher for us, and you can teach us how to drain the swamp." I think it's fair to say we are a long way from that moment many years ago. Some context that I think you all need to know of things that have been going on behind the scenes that kind of have led to this acrimony. There have been several flashpoints in this relationship, one of which was February 12th, where President Trump accused Zelenskyy of oversleeping for a meeting with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He felt that was disrespectful. Not only that, Secretary of State Marco Rubio had this to say: Trump is very upset with Zelenskyy. Biden was very upset with Zelenskyy. I am very upset with Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy told Vance and me he is okay with the deal, but then later publicly said he rejected the deal. You know, Steve, as I look at all of this, and we saw kind of this transpire into what was a caustic back and forth, the impetus for it, I think, was very important.
Right.
They were having a nice conversation, and then you had J.D. Vance speak, and then you had Zelenskyy talk about what kind of diplomacy are you talking about, and take on this accusatory tone towards the vice president, from which the vice president said, you should be coming in here being very thankful. We have given you $183 billion, and you come to the Oval Office with this.
Kayleigh, you're exactly right to set it up the way you did. We have never seen anything like that before, where it actually played out in real time. Usually, you know, they'll come out and they'll say, okay, we had a disagreement, but we actually got to see the disagreement. If I had to guess, you know, for Mr. Zelenskyy at one point essentially blamed Trump, Obama, and Biden as well. You guys never stopped him when you had the chance. Okay, that's not smart to do. Hey, Donald Trump, you had the chance and you blew it, essentially, is what he was doing. For a while, it kind of seemed to me like J.D. Vance and Trump were playing good cop, bad cop, where Trump was being the diplomat, and then J.D. Vance said, you know, say thank you. And eventually, Mr. Zelenskyy wound up arguing a lot and then groveling. Ultimately, this could be a lot like what we saw just a week ago, where Donald Trump referred to him as a dictator and a third-rate comedian and stuff like that, to get a better deal for the United States. For him to have an argument on television in front of the whole world, suddenly the whole world's going like, okay, Trump won that. Zelensky's going to have to do something.
I think that's such a good point, Emily. You know, the American public, we've seen, you know, kind of question, we're giving $183 billion in aid, and there are questions that come with that kind of money going to Ukraine. And, you know, you would think that Zelenskyy coming in would be very grateful in front of cameras, certainly, for that. And instead, we had this moment where he challenged the vice president. And the context I mentioned, I do want to bring it up just so our viewers can see. This is from Axios, and this describes that meeting that I think kind of is a huge part of the souring of this relationship. February 12th, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met Zelenskyy in Kyiv to offer a proposal that would give the U.S. access to Ukrainian mineral rights in return for de facto U.S. protection. Trump later told reporters Zelenskyy was rude and delayed his meeting with Bessent because he slept in. That's not the posture that I think a power would ordinarily take when given aid. I mentioned I was in the meeting with the Iraqi prime minister. And what you saw was a very mutual respect relationship between someone who'd received U.S. taxpayer aid and someone who was grateful for it and wanted to work with our country.
And I think the presence of cameras casts an entire dimension on this that is very important in the realm of diplomacy. So what we saw there is a president that has been exhausted by Putin's continued invasions of his country, right? But he is ascribing the failure to deter on the current administration with 2 administrations past. And I have only compassion for him and his people. And I can't imagine the exhaustion and rage that he must feel. But Vice President Vance was absolutely apt when saying, you should not be litigating this in front of the American media. And the point of diplomacy, which President Zelenskyy was asking about, which was essentially like, look, you guys, I don't trust your deal right now because we've gone through deals and it hasn't worked. Now, President and Vice President Vance are saying, look, there is a new sheriff in town. So you have to believe us. And I think under the auspices of, and you are currently in the American Oval Office in front of the American President, Commander-in-Chief, and his Vice President, and in front of the American media. And Vice President Vance pointing out, you have gone on a media, public press, public relations tour that has subverted a lot of our policies. So I think what we're seeing is someone who is totally at their wits' end, Zelenskyy, but taking it out in ways that is deeply damaging to the fragility and the importance of diplomacy with the current administration that has done everything it can to support and will continue to, while under the value system of America first. So I was deeply disappointed by this exchange just because it seems so stressful. And this also goes to show, for all of those headlines that crow about how easy it is for President Trump's job, it is not. It is an incredibly hard position for a commander-in-chief to inherit what happened before them and make good decisions. So bravo, President Trump and Vice President Vance.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a fact that is inescapable, Tommy, and it is that Putin went in under Obama's watch and Putin went in under Biden's watch. And there was a 4-year hiatus, and that happened to be the 4 years of President Trump. So when President Trump says he might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, but he hasn't broken them with me, there's facts to prove that.
And I think President Trump was rightfully insulted by the way President Zelenskyy has been acting for years now. Don't bite the hand that feeds you is essentially what I got out of all of that. Trump repeatedly said, you don't have the cards, you don't have the cards. And it was like a father swatting down their toddler who repeatedly has their hand out asking for allowance but doesn't want to mow the lawn. What he's saying is, we want to help you, but the way that you have paraded yourself in front of media for years, Hollywood audiences, in the fanfare on Vogue covers, the way you have this sense of entitlement as you ask us for money and guarantees. Now I'm trying to give you a deal that's good for my people and good for your people, and you're disrespectful. And so, whereas you didn't like that exchange, I loved it because that told me America is back. This is the president of the United States of America, and he's going to act like it. And repeatedly through there, it seemed as though Zelenskyy had his arms crossed like a toddler. You're not going to act like that with President Trump. Maybe a President Biden, but not with this administration and not with this country. I loved watching this play out in front of us.
And, Jerry, we as, as Americans, as voters, we only get tea leaves that we pick up on. We get reporting from sources inside meetings. And one item that I picked up on that I couldn't get out of my mind was when Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Biden would call and yell at Zelenskyy. And he referenced reporting that the Biden administration would give this aid, and then Zelenskyy would go out publicly and say, the Americans aren't giving me X, Y, or Z. There was this attitude of ungratefulness that it seems like also proliferated during the Biden years, according to the tea leaves referenced by Rubio.
And because of that, I agree with Tommy here. I'm glad to see this made public. I think it's fantastic. Now you understand what we're up against. Now you know what we see. in the public arena, in the private arena, usually. You know, we're getting a lot of pushback. That's the way it's working. I think a lot of Americans, particularly on the left, think we can get done whatever we have enough money, we have enough macho, we have what. No, it's hard. It takes a lot. And you're seeing that right now. And you saw the president, you know, put him in his place. Tommy, you said something before we even came to air about Zelenskyy not wearing a suit.
Yeah.
He's just not showing any respect, period.
Yeah, you know, Steve, I guess I would call it the $1 million question, but that seems like small ball. So I'm going to call it the $183 billion question. That's the amount of U.S. aid given to Ukraine, is whether this rare earth minerals deal gets signed. At the top of this, which we didn't show you, President Trump said it'd be signed at 1 p.m. Well, that is in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And it's hard to imagine these two guys sitting down and inking a deal in 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because during the bilateral press conference where both sides are together, they're going, okay, you asked 2 questions, you asked 2 questions. Those 2 questions on each side would be, so when the cameras went away, who wanted to strangle each other? Because obviously it did not go well. Remember, ultimately, Zelenskyy wanted this meeting because he wanted security guarantees from the United States of America. He's not going to get them because Trump has even said, I'm not going to talk about that until a peace deal is signed. And it's probably not going to be a peace deal today. It's going to be a stuff deal for rare earth and stuff like that. If I was Donald Trump, every time I have a world leader that I got a problem with in the Oval Office, bring in the cameras. You know what? Let's just go ahead and talk about it. Forget about the smoke-filled rooms. I think after decades of being told what happened, and then years later, we find out, well, it wasn't exactly like this. There's no disputing what we just saw. And not only is that good television, as Donald Trump said, but it's really good for the American people to see what is going on behind the scenes.
Right. And Emily, in just a few moments here, the role of Vice President J.D. Vance is interesting. He went on the world stage. He challenged Europe. He challenged them on free speech. He got a ton of criticism in the so-called mainstream media, but he got a lot of accolades from a lot of Americans saying he's saying it how it is. And J.D. Vance was the touchstone once again, kind of saying it like it is and challenging Zelenskyy.
And he's a veteran.
Yeah.
So this is someone who's coming into the Oval Office as the vice president and sitting, across from a current president who, with his attire and with his demeanor, seeks to remind everyone that he's currently in war. And he's sitting across from someone who knows exactly what that was like. So I think that, too, we've talked about this, that his relationship with the Senate, his relationship with the Hill, but his relationship as well in that front, I think does well to say, you have to remember who you're talking to this time around, sir, meaning this administration.
Yeah. Well, the last 4 years, the presidential press conference was rare. The questions and the freewheeling with President Biden was rare. But you just saw American diplomacy play out in a way I don't think we have seen, certainly in modern history. And now the overarching question as we approach the 1 p.m. hour, just a few seconds from now, is the rare earth mineral actually going to be signed? We will wait and see. And tonight on Special Report, now you can't miss it. Bret Baier sitting down with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy after that very tense exchange between him and President Trump. Do not miss it. The news continues.
please take a seat. And I will say that even though I, in my private sector days, was a technology investor in Silicon Valley, I haven't quite figured out how to work my government computer yet. So 30 days in, I'm going to have to wing this a little bit because I thought about what I was going to say on the morning over here. And that, of course, makes all the communications staff that are sitting backstage extremely nervous because they have no idea what I'm going to say. And before I went on, I talked to Luke, who's one of my main communications guys, and I said, Luke, this is all off the record, right? No one's going to say or know what I said today. So I can just say whatever I want. And I'm sure that none of you will leak it to Axios, and none of our friends in the media back there will stream it live. So let me, just offer a few notes of appreciation. First off, to Maureen Ferguson, who's become a dear friend of mine, and I know a great leader in this community. She and her husband, Mike, have been better and kinder to me than I deserve, and my entire family has been the beneficiary of it, especially in finding places to send my kids to school at the very last minute, because I'm a bit of a procrastinator, and Maureen and Mike have been very helpful in helping us navigate the DC school environment for our young children, and so we're grateful to them. I want to give a shout out and a note of appreciation to Congressman Chris Smith from the great state of New Jersey, who I know received the great award. And we're grateful to his leadership and grateful for his friendship, and he is a very good guy. So Chris, I assume you're out there somewhere, though I can't see you. But congratulations, man, we're proud of you, and I'm proud to be here with you. I want to thank Mark Randall, who of course has hosted an incredible breakfast for now. This is the 20th year, I believe, of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, and it seems like we're doing pretty good here with the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. And of course, this breakfast holds a very special place in my heart. As Maureen mentioned, I came here last year as a very young senator, not knowing how much my life would change. And I'm thankful to God, but also thankful to the friendship of the people in this room for helping us get there, because I think that we have turned a new page in Washington, D.C., and we are going to take advantage of the opportunity that God has given us. So I want to say a couple of words just about Trump administration policy, because while you're certainly not always going to agree with everything that we do in President Trump's administration, I feel very confident in saying that between protecting the rights of pro-life protesters, between ensuring that we have an opportunity to protect the rights of the unborn in the first place, and importantly, protecting the religious liberty of all people, but in particular Catholics, I think that we can say that President Trump, though not a Catholic himself, has been an incredibly good president for Catholics in the United States of America. Now, we know, of course, the last administration liked to throw people in jail for silently praying outside of pro-life clinics. We know that they like to harass pro-life fathers of seven, very often Catholic fathers, for participating in the pro-life movement. And we know that the last administration wanted to protect taxpayer-funded abortion right up into the moment of birth. And on every single one of those issues, in 30 short days, Donald J. Trump has gone in the exact opposite direction, and I am thankful for that, and I'm sure that every single person in this room is thankful for that as well. But I actually want to talk about a couple of other things. In particular, one of the most important parts of President Trump's policy, and where I think President Trump's policy is most in accord with Christian social teaching and with the Catholic faith, is that more than any president of my lifetime, President Trump has pursued a path of peace. And we very often, I think, ignore the way in which our foreign policy is either an instrument or an impediment to people all over the world being able to practice their faith. And we know, and as of course I learned in this breakfast last year, I believe there were some Nigerian priests who were being persecuted and were trying to protect their flock despite incredible persecution. We know that some of the biggest groups that are persecuted all over the world today are Christians.
And the Trump administration promises you that whether it's here at home with our own citizens or all over the world, we will be the biggest defenders of religious liberty and the rights of conscience. And I think those policies will fall to the benefit of Catholics in particular all over the world. But I would say, my friends, that it's not enough simply to protect the rights of conscience, to pursue funding opportunities and grant-making opportunities that protect the rights of people to engage in religious conscience. We also have to remember that oftentimes the biggest impediments to religious liberty have not come through malice from the United States government, but have actually come through carelessness. And one of the things that I have to be honest, that I am most ashamed about is that in the United States of America, sometimes it is our foreign misadventures that lead to the eradication of historical Christian communities all over the world. And so when President Trump talks about the need to bring peace, whether it's in Russia and Ukraine, whether it's in the Middle East, we of course have to recognize that as a policy oriented towards saving lives and carrying out one of Christ's most important commandments. But I think we also must recognize it as an effort to protect the religious liberty of Christians. Because over the past 40 years, it has often been historical Christian communities who bear the brunt of failed American foreign policy. And that is, in my view, perhaps the most important way in which Donald Trump has been a defender of Christian rights all over the world, is he has a foreign policy that is oriented towards peace. We have done it already so much in the past 30 days, and I'm proud that we will work for peace all over the world in the remaining 4 years of President Trump's term, and I think that's an important thing. Now, of course, we're not always going to agree, and I'm sure that there are people in this room who agree or disagree with some of our views on foreign policy, on any number of issues. The one thing that I will promise you is that you're always going to have an open door with me and with the president. I think that you've already seen that, and if you haven't, please come and bring your concerns, and some of you have already brought many concerns to me over the last 30 days, but also your attaboys, because I think that part of being a good presidential administration for people of faith all over the United States, part of it is listening to people of faith when they have concerns. And I think that it's important, and I'll make this commitment to you in front of God and in front of all those television cameras back there, that we will always listen to people of faith and people of conscience in the United States of America. You have an open door to the Trump administration, even and especially maybe when you disagree with us. So please use that opportunity, communicate with us when we get things right, but also when we get things wrong. And that is my solemn obligation, but also my request. Because, of course, as I've learned, during the campaign, of course, I got Secret Service protection, and now it's bumped up now that I'm the Vice President of the United States. I live in a bubble, ladies and gentlemen. I live in a roaming bubble, and wherever I go, I'm surrounded by armed agents. The only way to keep me honest and the only way to know what is actually affecting the real lives of people all over our country is for you to talk to us. And so please consider that open door very much an invitation, but also a request. And I will say that, I believe, Maureen, and maybe this is wrong, that I'm the first Catholic convert to ever be Vice President of the United States. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys clapping, because it turns out there are some people on the internet who don't like Catholic converts. And in fact, there are some Catholics who appear not to like Catholic converts. I've learned that the hard way, but of course the gross majority of my brothers and sisters in Christ have been incredibly welcoming and incredibly charitable, and for that I'm grateful. And I wanted to just reflect on that, on being a Catholic, and particularly a Catholic convert in public life, in the hopes that maybe it would provide some wisdom or some guidance or maybe just some interesting stories for those of you who are enjoying your breakfast. And one of the things that I try to remind myself of as a convert is that there's a lot I don't know. When I was a kid, we used to call new converts to the faith baby Christians, and I recognize very much that I am a baby Catholic, that there are things about the faith that I don't know, And so I try to be humble as best I can when I talk about the faith and publicly, because of course I'm not always going to get it right. And I don't want my inadequacies in describing our faith to fall back on the faith itself. And so if you ever hear me pontificating about the Catholic faith, please recognize it comes from a place of deep belief, but it also comes from a place of not always knowing everything all the time. And, you know, I say that, of course, I don't try to comment on every single Catholic issue. I try not to get involved in the civil wars between Dominicans and Jesuits and conservative Catholics and progressive Catholics. But as Michael Corleone said in The Godfather, sometimes they pull me back in. Sometimes I can't help. I can't help but spout off. I am a politician after all, ladies and gentlemen. But the thing that I've tried to remind people of, and the thing that I try to remind myself of, is that what attracted me to the Christian faith and what attracted me to this church in particular is the recognition that grace is not something that happens instantaneously. It's something that God works in us over a long period of time, sometimes many years and sometimes many decades. You know, I think that when I was a kid, my assumption is that grace is something where the Holy Spirit would come in and it would solve all of our problems. And I learned the hard way as a Catholic, in part by following the sacramental life as best as I could, that grace is very much a process, that God works in us over time. He makes us closer to Him and makes us better people in the process. And so when I first became a Catholic, you know, I would probably go to confession every other week because I would fail to go to Mass every other week. And, you know, things would come up. You'd have business trips. You'd have, you know, the kids would get sick. And I just remember that this process of thinking, okay, if I don't go to church this week, I'm going to have to go and talk to some stranger about everything that I did bad the last 2 weeks. And that process worked in me a much better discipline, a much better prayerful life. And, you know, I'm batting probably like 95% of Sundays now that I actually go to Mass. And so, you know, this is I think, one of the geniuses. Thank you. I think this is one of the geniuses of our faith, is that it teaches us through repetition in some ways, and it forms us through a process, of course, that is, I think, at the heart of the mystery of faith, that somehow by practicing the sacraments, even imperfectly, as I certainly do, God transforms us. And while I am as imperfect a Christian as any person in this room, I really do feel that God is transforming me every single day. And that's one of the great blessings of our faith and one of the great blessings of following the sacraments as I try to do. And so thank you all for welcoming a convert into your ranks, because I certainly benefit from it, and my family does too. You know, the second thing that I take from my Catholic faith is a recognition that the deepest and most important things are not material. They're not GDP. They're not the numbers that we see in the stock market. The real measure of health in a society is the safety and stability and the health of our families and of our people. We are in the business, of course, we're in the business of President Trump's administration of producing prosperity, but that prosperity is a means to an end. And that end is the flourishing, hopefully, of the life of every single citizen in the United States of America. That's why we care about these things. And, you know, I often remind myself that, you know, there have been times in the past where, you know, the GDP numbers were maybe moving in the right direction, where the stock market was moving in the right direction, but the United States of America was losing life expectancy. I think that what the Catholic Church calls me to do is to say that if the stock market's doing okay, but people are literally dying and losing years off of their life, then we have to do better as a country. Catholicism, Christianity, at its root, I think teaches our public officials to care about the deep things, the important things, the protection of the unborn, the flourishing of our children, and the health and the sanctity of our marriages. And yes, we care about prosperity, but we care about prosperity so that we can promote the common good of every citizen in the United States of America. And when I think about the deep things, the things that really matter, there was something really amazing that happened to me in November of 2024. All my friends were there, all my family was there. We were gathered together in a great moment of celebration. And of course, I'm talking about when my 7-year-old chose to be baptized into the Christian faith. And Ewan is at school right now, so he won't see this, but as amazing as it was to win the election, of course, in November of 2024, and as amazing as it was to know that President Trump would become president again and would get to accomplish so many good things for the American people, the thing that I was most excited about in November of 2024 is that the week after we won the election, my son chose to be baptized in the Christian faith. Now, here's the basic idea, and for those of you, of course, you all mostly are cradle Catholics, I assume, and typically we do water baptism of infants in the Catholic Church very, very early on. But as many of you know, I am part of an interfaith marriage. My wife, though she comes to church with us almost every single Sunday, she is not Catholic herself. And so the bargain that we have struck is that we will raise our kids Catholic, but we will let them choose the moment that they want to ultimately become baptized. And if that's terrible sacrilege, blame the Dominicans because they're the ones who came up with this scheme. But my 7-year-old elected to become baptized, and it was the proudest moment maybe that I've ever had as a father. And he took it very seriously, and he wanted to know, what are the right things to say, Dad? What do I need to do? What does this mean? Why is this important? And it was an amazing thing for me to see my 7-year-old working through these things himself. And when I talk about the deep things, the important things, that's what I'm talking about. Of course we care about our economic indicators, and of course we care about the wages of our citizens. We care about those things because when our people are doing better, they can have the kinds of moments that promote the kind of flourishing that all of us believe is the very core of a good human life. And that, of course, in my case, was watching my little 7-year-old son become baptized. And so, while again, I will never be perfect, I will always try to remind myself that the goal of our public policy is to promote the common good, and I will fight for that every single day that I am a public official. And that brings me to the final observation I'd like to make as a Christian, a Catholic convert in public life, is that, sometimes the bishops don't like what I say. And I'm sure, by the way, sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. My goal is not to litigate when I'm right and when they're wrong or vice versa. My goal is to maybe articulate the way that I think about being a Christian in public life when you also have religious leaders in public life who have a spiritual duty to speak on the issues of the day. And the way that I try to think about it is the Catholic Church is a kind of technology. It's a technology that was developed 2,000 years ago, and it's coming into contact with a technology that's about 10 years old, 20 years old, and that's, of course, social media. And what I try to remind myself of is that the clergy are important spiritual leaders. You'll sometimes hear people say, well, we'll let the clergy talk about matters of the church, but we can ignore them when it comes to matters of public policy. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. That's certainly not the right way to look at it for me. But what I try to remind myself of is that we are not called as Christians to obsess over every social media controversy that implicates the Catholic Church. Whether it involves a clergy or a bishop or the Holy Father himself, I think that we could frankly take a page out of the books of our grandparents who respected our clergy, who looked to them for guidance, but didn't obsess and fight over every single word that came out of their mouth and entered social media. I don't think that's good. And I'm not, again, counseling all of you, but I don't think it's good for us as Christians to constantly fight with one another over every single controversy in the church. Sometimes we should let this stuff play out a little bit and try to live our faith as best we can under the dictates of our faith and under the dictates of our spiritual leaders, but not hold them to the standards of social media influencers, because they're not. And I think And that brings me, of course, to the last point that I want to make, which is that, as you've probably seen publicly, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, has criticized some of our policies when it comes to immigration. And again, my goal here is not to litigate with him or any other clergy member about who's right and who's wrong. You obviously know my views, and I will speak to them consistently because I think that I have to do it because it serves the best interests of the American people. What I want to do instead is remind, and I talk to a lot of conservative Catholics, and I talk to progressive Catholics too, and I think that sometimes a lot of conservative Catholics are too preoccupied with their political criticisms of a particular clergy member or the leader of the Catholic Church. And of course, I'm not telling you that you're wrong, because sometimes I even agree with you. I think that what I would say is that it's not in the best interest of any of us, again, to treat the religious leaders of our faith as just another social media influencer. And I think, frankly, that goes in both ways. If I can be so bold, I think it's incumbent upon our religious leaders to recognize that in the era of social media, people will hang on every single word that they utter, even if that wasn't their intention, and even if a given declaration wasn't meant for consumption in the social media age. But every day since I heard of Pope Francis's illness, I say a prayer for the Holy Father, because while, yes, I was certainly surprised when he criticized our immigration policy in the way that he has, I also know that the Pope, I believe that the Pope is fundamentally a person who cares about the flock of Christians under his leadership. And he's the man And he's a man who cares about the spiritual direction of the faith. And I say this because every day, me and my children have said a prayer for the Holy Father. And we pray for his health, and we pray for his comfort as he deals with what appears to be a pretty serious health crisis. And while, yes, some of our media and some of our social media influencers and even some of us fellow Catholics, I think, try to bring the Holy Father into every culture war battle in American politics, I will always remember the Holy Father, whether he makes its way through this illness, and I certainly hope that he does. I will always remember the Holy Father in March of 2020, at a time of incredible stress for really the entire world. Remember, that was the height of the COVID pandemic. None of us knew how bad it was. We heard reports from Italy of people dying in mass on ventilators. And personally, I had just a few weeks earlier welcomed our second child into the world. And so when the COVID pandemic happened, I had a 3-week-old baby at home, and I went to Dick's Sporting Goods, and I bought 900 rounds of ammunition. And then I went to Walmart, and I bought 2 bags of rice. And I sat at home with my bags of rice and my 900 rounds of ammunition and said, all right, we're just going to wait this thing out. And into that void, when a lot of people didn't know how bad it was, and of course, thankfully, the pandemic was not as bad as the very worst predictions. It was quite bad, but not as bad as the very worst predictions. I think all of us can remember that moment of the Holy Father standing in an empty St. Peter's Square, holding the Eucharist above his head, and giving a sermon that I return to consistently because it was incredibly meaningful to me at the time, and it remains meaningful today. And so if you'll forgive me, I hope that you'll be okay with me reading just an excerpt of the homily that Pope Francis gave. When evening had come, which of course is from Mark chapter 4, verse 35, the gospel passage we have heard begins like this. For weeks now, it has been evening. Thick darkness has gathered over our squares, our streets, and our cities. It has taken over our lives, filling everything with a deafening silence and a distressing void that stops everything as it passes by. We feel it in the air, we notice it in people's gestures. Their glances give them away. We find ourselves afraid and lost. Like the disciples in the gospel, we were caught off guard by an unexpected, turbulent storm. We have realized that we are on the same boat, all of us fragile and disoriented, but at the same time important and needed. All of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other. On this boat are all of us, just like those disciples who spoke anxiously with one voice, saying, "We are perishing." So we too have realized that we cannot go on thinking of ourselves, but only together can we do this. It is easy to recognize ourselves in this story. What is harder to understand is Jesus' attitude. While his disciples are quite naturally alarmed and desperate, he is in the stern, in the part of the boat that sinks first. And what does he do? In spite of the tempest, he sleeps on soundly, trusting in the Father. This is the only time in the Gospels we see Jesus sleeping. When he wakes up, after calming the wind and the waters, he turns to the disciples in a reproaching voice. "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" Let us try to understand, in what does the lack of the disciples' faith consist, as contrasted with Jesus' trust? They had not stopped believing in him. In fact, they called on him. But we see how they call on him. "Teacher, do you not care if we perish?" Do you not care, they think, that Jesus is not interested in them, does not care about them? One of the things that hurts us in our families most when we hear said is, "Do you not care about me?" It is a phrase that wounds and unleashes storms in our hearts. It would have shaken Jesus too, because he, more than anyone, cares about us. Indeed, once they have called on him, he saves his disciples from their discouragement. The storm exposes our vulnerability and uncovers those false and superfluous certainties around which we have constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits, and priorities. It shows us how we have allowed to become dull and feeble the very things that nourish, sustain, and strengthen our lives and our communities. The tempest lays bare all our prepackaged ideas and forgetfulness of what nourishes our people's souls. All those attempts that anesthetize us with ways of thinking and acting that supposedly save us, but instead prove incapable of putting us in touch with our roots and keeping alive the memory of those who have gone before us. We deprive ourselves of the antibodies we need to confront adversity. And I think that is an amazing phrase. That what we do so often in our lives, in our public life, in our private lives, is we deprive ourselves of the antibodies we need to confront adversity. And that is how I will always remember the Holy Father, is as a great pastor, as a man who can speak the truth of the faith in a very profound way at a moment of great crisis. And so I would ask all of us, if you would join me in this prayer for Pope Francis. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty and generous God, we thank you for your charity. Please grant your mercy upon Pope Francis so he may be restored from sickness and guide us in watchful care. We pray that you bless our Holy Father's doctors, nurses, and medical staff with wisdom and capability so that you may work through them to renew the health of your shepherd through Christ our Lord. Amen. And I think that as I conclude my remarks here, I'm not ever going to be perfect. I'm never ever going to get everything right. But what I will try to do is to try to be the kind of leader who helps our shared civilization build those true antibodies against adversity. And if the Holy Father can hear us, I hope he knows that there are thousands of faithful Catholics in this room and millions of faithful Catholics in this country who are praying for him as he weathers his particular storm. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Today it's my privilege to welcome the Prime Minister of a very special place, the United Kingdom, to the White House. Prime Minister Starmer, you've been terrific in our discussions. You're a very tough negotiator, however. I'm not sure I like that, but that's okay. Very, very special person. The Prime Minister and I have gotten off to an outstanding start. The U.S. and U.K. have a special relationship, very special, really like no other, passed down through the centuries, and we're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep it very strong as it is. Very importantly, I was just notified by letter from King Charles that he's extended through the Prime Minister a historic second state visit to the United Kingdom. And that's a great honor because it's never happened before. One person has never been extended that honor, and I really do call it an honor, but it's not for me, it's for our country. It's respect for our country. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank King Charles. Thank you very much, and we accept. I don't know if the media is going to follow us. I have a feeling they might. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm pleased to say that the bust of one of the Prime Minister's greatest predecessors, Winston Churchill, is now back in the rightful place in the Oval Office, and we're very proud of it. Our meeting today and the various breakout sessions we had were tremendously productive. Most importantly, I provided the Prime Minister with an update on our efforts to end the bloody and horrible war in Ukraine with Russia, which would never have happened if I were president. That was not going to happen. I promise you that. After 3 years of hellacious conflict, approximately 1 million Ukrainians and Russians have been senselessly killed, but the number, I believe, is much higher than that. Countless schools, hospitals, towns, and beautiful ancient churches have been absolutely obliterated. To begin the process of ending this spiral of death, I had historic back-to-back calls with President Putin, very successful calls, I might add, and President Zelenskyy, and my team also spoke with the Secretary General of NATO on numerous occasions, and we're working very hard to get that war brought to an end. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think it's moving along pretty rapidly. And I want to thank all of the people that are here that have been working on it. And we'll let you know what happens. It'll either be fairly soon or it won't be at all. In addition, this week I met with President Macron of France, as you know, and held talks with members of the G7. Tomorrow, the progress toward peace will continue when President Zelenskyy visits the White House. He'll be here tomorrow in the early part of the day, and we'll be signing a historic agreement that will make the United States a major partner in developing Ukraine's minerals and rare earths and oil and gases, and we have a great understanding. I think it's going to be great for Ukraine. We're going to be at the site, and we'll be digging. We'll be digging. Dig we must. A big utility in New York, Con Edison, they used to have a sign, dig we must, and we will be digging. But much of the European aid to Ukraine has been sent in the form of loans for which they expect to be paid back, and we didn't have that honor under the Biden administration. He sent money, or just sent it, money after money after money, and never had any knowledge of ever seeing it back. Maybe $300 to $350 billion, but under the breakthrough agreement, very unusual, which everyone said was difficult to get, but it's really very good for Ukraine and very good for us. The American taxpayers will now effectively be reimbursed for the money and hundreds of billions of dollars poured into helping Ukraine defend itself, which by and of itself is a very worthy thing to do. We've paid far more than any other country, and with most of our support, it's been paid in military, the finest weapons anywhere in the world. This includes vast amounts of military hardware, ammunition, and various other things that we now have to start rebuilding our own stockpiles. Additionally, the minerals agreement will provide the basis for a more sustainable future relationship between the United States and Ukraine, and thus stimulate the long-term prosperity that will help the Ukrainians rebuild their country. It's been demolished, and the ruined infrastructure. The infrastructure, as you know, is in very bad shape. In just over 1 month, our administration has already achieved more progress toward peace than years in the other administration where they did nothing toward peace. They didn't understand what was happening. Our approach is basically common sense. As I said, so many of the things that we do are based on common sense. If you want peace, you have to talk, both sides. As I discussed with Prime Minister Starmer, the next step we're making is toward a very achievable ceasefire. We hope that that can happen quickly, because thousands of young people, in this case, we're not talking about Americans, we're talking about Ukrainians and Russians are being killed every week, thousands. And it's a rough battlefield. It's a flat piece of land, and the bullet only stops when it hits somebody. And this week, I saw the reports, and it's I don't even want to say what they are, but thousands of people, young, vibrant people died. And we want to stop that. Senseless. Should have never happened. This will lay the groundwork for a long-term peace agreement that will return stability to Eastern Europe and hopefully ensure that such a terrible war will never happen on European soil, or for that matter, anywhere again. It's a horrible thing that's going on. The disaster in Ukraine shows exactly why it's so important for the United Kingdom and other NATO partners to make large investments in their defense capabilities. In many cases, 4% or 5% of GDP would be appropriate. I know that they're raising it. I just read an article, a great article, about the work you're doing in the UK as to the military. You're raising it quite a bit, which is a great thing to do for your country. It's a great thing to do. It's sad that we need that, but probably need that. So congratulations on that. I know you got it through. After years of chronic underfunding, there's an urgent need to catch up for some countries. And I want to thank the Prime Minister once again for traveling here today. Working together, I believe that we'll once again demonstrate the power of our country's unique friendship. This is indeed a unique friendship. It's been many years, and I think it's only gotten stronger, and we will make sure that it stays that way. We're going to have a great trade agreement. One way or the other, we're going to end up with a very good trade agreement for both countries, and we're working on that as we speak. I think we'll have the confines. I think we'll have something maybe even in terms of possibilities agreed to very shortly. JD's working on it, Vice President, and Scott, and I'm just looking at this all from Mike. You're going to work on it. Everyone's going to work on it. We'll see if we can do something pretty quickly, but we're going to make some great trade agreements with the UK and with the Prime Minister, and it'll happen very quickly. So I just want to thank you again, and please thank King Charles for the invite, and I look forward to you giving our acceptance on behalf of the United States of America. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your leadership. This has been a very good and very productive visit. And with your family roots in Scotland and your close bond with His Majesty the King, it's good to know that the United Kingdom has a true friend in the Oval Office. And it was so good to see the bust of Winston Churchill back in its rightful place just a moment ago. But look, in a moment of real danger around the world, this relationship matters more than ever. We remain each other's first partner in defence, ready to come to the other's aid, to counter threats wherever and whenever they may arise. No two militaries are more intertwined than ours. No two countries have done more together to keep people safe. And in a few weeks, we mark VE Day, the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe. Britain and America fought side by side to make that happen. One of the greatest moments in our history. We stand side by side still today, and we're focused now on bringing an enduring end to the barbaric war in Ukraine. Mr. President, I welcome your deep and personal commitment to bring peace and to stop the killing. You've created a moment of tremendous opportunity to reach a historic peace deal, a deal that I think would be celebrated in Ukraine and around the world. That is the prize. But we have to get it right. There's a famous slogan in the United Kingdom from after the Second World War. That is that we have to win the peace. And that's what we must do now. Because it can't be peace that rewards the aggressor or that gives encouragement to regimes like Iran. We agree history must be on the side of the peacemaker, not the invader. So the stakes, they couldn't be higher. And we're determined to work together to deliver a good deal. We've discussed a plan today to reach a peace that is tough and fair, that Ukraine will help shape, that's backed by strength, to stop Putin coming back for more. I'm working closely with other European leaders on this, and I'm clear that the UK is ready to put boots on the ground and planes in the air to support a deal, working together with our allies, because that is the only way that peace will last. Mr. President, in this new era, you're also right that Europe must step up. And let me tell you now, I see the growing threats we face, and so the UK is all in. This year we'll be giving more military aid to Ukraine than ever, and just this week I've set out how we're shouldering more of the security burden. We're already one of the biggest spenders in NATO, and now we're going much further, delivering Britain's biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. This isn't just talk, it's action, rebalancing the transatlantic alliance, making us all stronger, and standing up for our shared values and shared security, as Britain always has. And Mr. President, it's no secret we're from different political traditions, but there's a lot that we have in common. We believe it's not taking part that counts. What counts is winning. If you don't win, you don't deliver. And we're determined to deliver for the working people of Britain and America, who want and deserve to see their lives improve. So we're both in a hurry to get things done, and that's what the UK and US do when we work together. We win and we get things done. So we'll do what it takes to keep our people safe. We'll also work together to deliver some big economic wins that can benefit us both. We have a $1.5 trillion invested in each other's economies, creating over 2.5 million jobs across both economies. Our trading relationship is not just strong, it's fair, balanced, and reciprocal. We're leaders together in so many areas, ranked 1 and 2 in the world as investment destinations, 1 and 2 for universities, 1 and 2 for Nobel Prizes, 1 and 2 in golf as well, by the way. And we're the only 2 Western countries with trillion-dollar tech sectors, leaders in AI. And look, we take a similar approach on this issue. Instead of over-regulating these new technologies, we're seizing the opportunities that they offer. So we've decided today to go further, to begin work on a new economic deal with advanced technology at its core. Look, our 2 nations together shaped the great technological innovations of the last century. We have a chance now to do the same for the 21st century. I mean, artificial intelligence could cure cancer. That could be a moonshot for our age. And that's how we'll keep delivering for our people. There are so many opportunities. Keep our nation strong and fulfill the promise of greatness that has always defined this relationship. Finally, to underline the importance of this bond, it was my privilege and honour to bring a letter with me today from His Majesty the King, not only sending his best wishes, but also inviting the President and the First Lady to make a state visit to the United Kingdom, an unprecedented second state visit. This has never happened before. It's so incredible, it will be historic. And I'm delighted that I can go back to His Majesty the King and tell him that President Trump has accepted the invitation. So thank you. Our teams will now work together to set a date, and we look forward to welcome you in the United Kingdom. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful accent. I would have been president 20 years ago if I had that accent. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier today, you told me that you believe that foreign countries pay tariffs, but Americans who are concerned about higher prices believe, as most people do, that they're paid by consumers and importers when they import things into this country. Can you explain how you came to this belief that foreign governments are paying tariffs? And for the Prime Minister, did you discuss with President Trump his repeated statements of desire to annex Canada? And has the King expressed any concern over the President's apparent desire to remove one of his realms from his control?
So I'll go ahead. The first part, the tariffs are necessary because we've been treated very unfairly by many, many countries, including our friends, friend and foe. But we've been treated very unfairly in trade at levels that nobody's really ever seen before, and especially under the Biden administration, they really took advantage of the United States. I put massive tariffs on China during my 4 years. We had the best economy in the history of our country. Probably the best economy, maybe the best economy in the history of the world. And I used tariffs to even things up. And in particular with China, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars and we had no inflation. And it's a myth. It's a myth that's put out there by foreign countries that really don't like paying tariffs, and especially to even up. So we've been treated badly by a lot. We're using tariffs. And I find, and you just have to look at the numbers, but I find that it's not about inflation. It's about fairness. And the inflation for us has not existed. And I don't think it's going to exist. We're going to bring our car industry back. We're going to bring our chips back. We're going to bring so many things back to our country, including pharmaceuticals and drugs. And the thing that's going to get us there is tariffs. And I say often it's my favorite word in the dictionary, but I always preface that by saying now, because I got into a lot of trouble with the fake news where they say that's not good. So I say God, love, family, wife, they're all my favorite words, but tariff is about number 4 or 5 on the list. But I will tell you, it's going to make our country rich, and it's going to stop us from being a laughing stock all over the world, because we have been taken advantage of like no country has ever been taken advantage of. Thank you very much. And
look, we had a really good discussion, a productive discussion, a good discussion, as a result of which our teams are now going to be working together on an economic deal. Our teams are going to be working together on security in Ukraine. You mentioned Canada. I think you're trying to find a divide between us that doesn't exist. We're the closest of nations, and we had very good discussions today, but we didn't discuss Canada.
Thank you. Please. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Natasha Clark from
Hi.
LBC. Mr. President, you've said you're working on a new trade deal with Britain, which we of course welcome. President Obama once said Britain was at the back of the queue for that trade deal. Where are we now? When do you think we're going to see that? And Prime Minister, the BBC has today admitted serious flaws over the recent Gaza coverage, suggestions of payments made to people linked to Hamas. Does the BBC still have your trust? Thank you.
Well, they didn't do well with President Obama. He'd never got a lot of things done, and he didn't get a trade deal done that was of any importance or magnitude. We've had great discussions on trade, and I think we're going to have a deal done rather quickly as it can be done. We're going to have something, I think, rather quickly. We expect to do that. Okay? Please.
On the BBC, look, I've been concerned about the programme in question. The Secretary of State had a meeting with the BBC. I think it was yesterday, could have been the day before. Thank you.
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Pardon me. Mr. President, do you support Article 5 of the NATO treaty
And are you concerned that it might be triggered if European peacekeeping forces end up in Ukraine?
I support it. I don't think we're going to have any reason for it. I think we're going to have a very successful peace, and I think it's going to be a long-lasting peace. And I think it's going to happen hopefully quickly. If it doesn't happen quickly, it may not happen at all. And we want it for two reasons. Number one, I want to see on a humane basis, I want to see soldiers stop getting shot, because largely it's soldiers now. Towns have been obliterated, but it's largely that. And I don't want to pay billions and billions and billions of dollars, nor does the Prime Minister or anybody else, on a senseless war that should have never happened. And we're going to get it taken care of. But I think it's going to be a peace that's going to be long-lasting. Do you have a question for the Prime Minister?
Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, you were asking the President today about a backstop for Europe if the peacekeeping force ends up in Ukraine. Did you feel like you got a satisfying answer for yourself and for Europe? And Mr. President, if you want to comment on that as well, please do.
I felt we had a very productive discussion. Obviously, as the President says, the deal has to come first. But yes, our teams are going to be talking about how we make sure that deal sticks, is lasting and enforced. So our teams will be talking about that.
Okay. Please, Blue.
Mr. President, some experts think it could take more than a decade to mine the precious minerals from Ukraine. How much should the U.S. expect to receive, and when do you expect to see that come to fruition?
Well, we're never going to know that answer, but by our being in Ukraine and doing the exploration and also the digging and taking the rare earth, which we need in our country very badly, we'll be doing a substantial amount of work, probably about at least what we have in there, and we hope to be able to do that. You never know when it comes to that. You know, you dig and maybe things aren't there like you think they're there, but we'll be spending a lot of time there. It'll be great for Ukraine. It's like a huge economic development project, so it'll be good for both countries, okay? Please.
Prime Minister, excuse me, Prime Minister, you've talked about putting British soldiers' boots on the ground in Ukraine in the event that President Trump succeeds with his peace deal. But can you do that without a firm assurance that America will have our back in the form of some kind of security guarantee were Putin to breach that agreement? And Mr. President, tomorrow you're seeing President Zelenskyy to sign this deal on minerals and energy that could be hugely important to the United States. Will you take the opportunity to apologize to him for calling him a dictator while praising Vladimir Putin, who is a dictator?
Well, Robert, let me start by saying I've been really clear today and previously that I think that European countries, including the United Kingdom, need to step up in our own defence and security. We've been doing that in recent days. You saw the announcement we made on spending just the other day. In addition to that, I've made it clear that the United Kingdom will play its full part in ensuring that if there's a deal, and we hope there is a deal in Ukraine, that is a lasting deal that sticks. And we're obviously working with other European countries on that, France and NATO in particular. But I think I'm hosting 18 countries on Sunday to further our discussions. You heard from the President this morning that, you know, as historically has always been the case, we have each other's backs. And today we've been talking about the deal, how that will be a lasting deal. And coming out of this, our teams will now be talking in detail about that.
And I think we're going to have a very good meeting tomorrow, 11 o'clock. And I think we're going to have a very good meeting tomorrow morning. We're going to get along really well, okay? We have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for them. We've given them a lot of equipment and a lot of money, but they have fought very bravely, no matter how you figure it. They have really fought. Somebody has to use that equipment, and they have been very brave in that sense. Yeah, please, go ahead.
ceasefire deal is nearing an end this Saturday, and there's been some worry that phase 2 might never get there. Do you believe that phase 2 of the ceasefire in Gaza will come to fruition? And have you spoken to Netanyahu about it? And for the Prime Minister, this peacekeeping deal has been pushed forward by the UK and France as well. Have you been in discussions with any other European countries to join this initiative? And are you expecting Commonwealth countries to also join the effort? Thank you.
So we're working very hard in the Middle East and Gaza and all of the problems, and it's been going on for years and years and centuries and centuries. It's a tough neighborhood, but it could be a very beautiful neighborhood, and I think we're going to come up with some pretty good solutions. But phase 1 is almost complete. We've had some people that have been very seriously injured, very seriously hurt, both physically and mentally. They've come out of there very, some of them in very, very bad shape. It's shocking. Many young people aren't in bad shape. Young people are strong, healthy. They don't die. People have come out dead, young people and old people. It's a rough situation, but I think we're going to make it much better, and I think that we've had a huge impact on that since we've been in just the 4 weeks. I think we've had a huge impact on Gaza, the Middle East, and we have some pretty good talks going on concerning lots of other people that are going to make it better. So we'll see what happens. Nobody really knows, but we'll see what happens. But I think we've had a very positive impact. Prime Minister?
Yeah, on the question of the European countries, yes, I've spoken to a number of countries, particularly in the last few weeks. We had a meeting in Paris last week. I've got a meeting on Sunday with 18 countries to further our discussions. Obviously, we've been talking quite intensely to our French colleagues and to NATO, but to other countries as well, because, as I say, I think it's important for European countries, including the United Kingdom, to step up and do more in the defence and security of Europe and our continent and the United Kingdom, and we'll do so. Well, we're talking to a number of other countries.
Thank you. Yes, in the red, please. Pink red, flaming red.
Is it me or her?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. A question on Ukraine. Number one is, if you're not considering the security guarantees, are you open to other forms of, for example, intelligence cooperation with Ukraine? And Mr. Prime Minister, President Trump has proposed a plan for Gaza. Does this fit into the two-state solution that the UK held for a long time? Do you see it fit into your general Middle Eastern strategy? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're open to many things, but before I even think about that, that's almost pleasant to think about because that would mean that peace has been arrived at. We have to arrive at that peace. And, you know, you went 3.5 years with an administration that never even really had a meeting. They didn't have a meeting on peace. And there was no prospect of peace. I think, frankly, Russia wanted to go through the whole long deal. I don't think they do anymore. I don't think they do. We had a very big impact on that whole situation. But I don't like talking about phase 2 until I get phase 1. Phase 1 is I have to make peace. And we have to get Russia to agree. We have to get Ukraine to agree. And I think we will, I think we've come a long way. I believe we're going to get it done. I wouldn't say that if I didn't think so. And I think it will be very important, very historic, and we're going to save a lot of lives.
On the question of Gaza, the last few weeks of the ceasefire have been very impactful. And for me, there are two images that I remember more than any other. The first is Emily Damari, who is British, being reunited with her mother. You may remember she had her fingers missing after what she endured. That was an incredible moment. I'd spent a lot of time with her mother whilst she was held captive, and her mother went through absolute torture. The other image was thousands of Palestinians marching through rubble, trying to return to their communities and their homes. So we have to do everything we can to ensure that the ceasefire continues, so that more hostages can be returned, so that aid can be brought in that's desperately needed. and we need to allow Palestinians to return and to rebuild their lives, and we must all support them in doing that. And yes, I believe that the two-state solution is ultimately the only way for a lasting peace in the region.
And think of that, she came home with her fingers and part of her hand blown off.
That's terrible.
How bad does it get? And we had others that came home in much worse shape than that.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation. Please, yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, did our Prime Minister persuade you not to put tariffs on the UK? And if I may, Prime Minister, do you think that Vladimir Putin is a man who will keep his word? Thanks.
He tried. He was working hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. But he tried. I think there's a very good chance that in the case of these two great friendly countries, I think we could very well end up with a real trade deal where the tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see. But he earned whatever they pay him. He earned today. He was working hard at lunch, and I'm very receptive to it. I think in all fairness, in all seriousness, I think we have a very good chance at arriving at a very good deal. JD and Scott and Howard, all the people are working on it, and I think we have a good chance at arriving at a deal that could be terrific, really terrific for both countries. Okay? Thank you.
On the second part of the question, I think my views on Putin are pretty well rehearsed and pretty well known. And my concern is that if there's a deal, and I hope there is a deal, that it must be a lasting deal, that it's not a temporary measure. And that is why I think it's really important that Putin knows that this deal, a historic deal, which I very much hope comes about, is there, and it's a lasting deal, and that we're able to deal with any inclination he has to go again or go further.
I think we'll have two deals. I think we'll have a deal on ending the war, and I think we're going to end up with a great trade deal with you. And it's an honor to be with you, and I want to thank everybody very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.